Hi, welcome to Wild Widow Woman. Um, fourth episode. Yay, me. Hey, welcome again, and I'm happy that you're here. I've got a few notes here and some things that I wanted to talk about today. So again, my name is Rachel, and I am the Wild Widow from the Wild Widow Woman podcast and foundation. Um, again, this is my fourth episode, and I've done a few things. I've told my story a little bit here and there before. I'm going to touch on some of the secondary losses and some of the deeper things inside of that Venn diagram that I spoke on a couple of weeks ago. So I shared my personal journey of loss and how it kind of affected me back then. I Just to recap, my husband died on March 15th, 2016, 4 days after my youngest daughter's birthday. They were My two girls were 14 and 16 when he died. I was 47, he was 57. It will be 9 years this March. So all of that's the nutshell version of what happened. Um, and I'm going to start with coping mechanisms and what that looks like and how those come about for most of us. So I have had the privilege of being around 12-step programs for the better part of 40 plus years. My mother's a recovering alcoholic, and I've been in Al-Anon for about 30 years of that. And what I've learned, what I know about coping is that when we're in crisis, the very best parts of us, the strongest, the most stalwart parts of us come forward and begin to protect us and help us and support us in every way that it knows how. Self is a very powerful, powerful part of us. Those coping mechanisms are our very strongest, most resilient, if you will, our very best thinking, are part of our character. They're our character traits. And just like anything else that gets used a lot over time, especially in crisis or in a traumatic time, there's a little wear and tear to those character traits, and they sometimes become damaged and a little defective, and that's when they become what we refer to as character defects. And those character defects then are still part of our character, just a little awry, still trying to protect us the best way it knows how. Um, can look a little askew and can look a little chaotic. So for me, the steps that I began taking after my primary loss, which was the loss of my husband, was I knew, I've known most of my life that if my best thinking got me into something, I'm going to need somebody else's help getting out. So I promptly went into therapy. That was my very first thing, and started working on the different aspects of my grief that I could. It wasn't a great experience right out the gate. I seek my counseling from Jewish Family Services. Huge shout out to that organization. They work on a sliding scale. They do take insurance. They have Not only do they have counseling services, but they have a pharmacy. No, they have a clinic. They have a psychiatrist that can prescribe your meds. They have a food pantry. They have all kinds of fun, great stuff and support. So that's who I went through to find my therapist. I had a couple of interns, three interns that were only there for about 6 months. So it took me, I don't know, better part of 18 months to 2 years to find somebody permanently. Um, and I was with her for a good minute. Um, the training or the therapy that I got from that particular clinician was cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And it focuses a lot on how to change behaviors and how to change our thoughts so that our behaviors change. Uh, though, and that works great. It is exactly what I needed for the couple of years that I was with that gal, with that particular clinician. From there, the next one that I had was um, more trauma focused, and as a result of that time with her, we'll call her number two. Number two, I was able to find some spirituality that I could relate to, and that I can have confidence in and understand and love. Um, and then the one after that, number three, she listened to me a lot, and she helped me, or she let me, she didn't help me, but she let me self-discover by just talking stuff out and processing, asking the questions. Tell me more about that. How did that feel? Tell me about the feelings attached to blah blah blah, that kind of thing. And it was and that was very, very helpful. Currently on to number four, and for various and sundry reasons, and we're finding a groove, and it's so far so good. I say all of that to say, uh those were the externals that I added to my life. The internals were already there, and the coping mechanisms that I used were already in place from childhood traumas and whatnot. So I set out doing the things that I knew to do. I started smoking weed. I did some day drinking back in the day, and I did sex. That was my thing. That was my um, primary drug of choice, was just having sex, getting laid. And I know this is raw, and that's probably inappropriate for, some people. So, whatever, I don't care. It's what I experienced. So moving through that, I want to address what my perception is, what I believe about my periphery. And what I mean by that is how the support looked and what came down, and, what that kind of looks like today. Externally, my support began waning pretty quickly, within my family as well as outside of my family. Um, Even sources like my mom, my parents, no one knows what to do with a widow. And I was a young widow, 47 years old, and not, this wasn't supposed to happen to me. Um, so all of the practical things that I was being that were being suggested were bouncing off of deaf ears. I remember saying at one point, I didn't know how to do this, and no one showed me how. And the response I got was, "Well, you didn't ask." Well, I didn't know I needed it. Um, I didn't even know what to ask for. What I got was, though, a lot of judgment in the way I was doing it. I was told, we'll start with money, for instance. I was told by my financial advisor that if I continued to spend money the way I was spending it, I was going to be I would run out of money in 3 years. He was right. He gave me some great information. He just didn't give me anything else to do differently. Um, and a mind in crisis does what it knows. And all I knew was that it took $6,000 a month to run my house. And that's what I did till I got to a place where I couldn't run that house anymore. And I just moved us into a different one. And then it was like $4,000 a month. Um, Facts being the facts, I didn't have the help that I needed. And I didn't know what to ask for. Um, that is one of my main thrusts here with the Wild Widow Woman Foundation, is that as widows come to the foundation, as widows approach the foundation, these needs are already anticipated. Um, you have an insurance settlement. We don't want you going through $250,000 in 3 years because nobody told you to do something different with it. I want to make sure that you have somebody that tells you something different you can do with it. And asking those people closest to us, I find, can be a bit discombobulating, because not only does everyone have a different opinion of how we should be doing it, but chances are they're not doing it in a way that would support us anyway. They live different lives than we do. My parents couldn't offer much because they weren't widows with two young girls. So they didn't know what to offer based on what was going on. They only knew what to offer based on what they had. And not that the suggestions that I got weren't great. Some of them were, and I did a lot of it. Um, but it is what it is, and I still ended up where I ended up. So in a different area, let's say, coping with my children and friendships and whatnot. I didn't have a lot of girlfriends. I had a couple, and I was in a place where I didn't know how to be a friend. And today I don't have those friendships because I couldn't be a good friend then. And now, um, I don't know what happened. Maybe my opportunity to be a friend went away. I don't, I can't speak for them, but what I know is that here I am sometime later and I didn't do it right. And now I don't have those friendships. Within my family, I was straight up told that I was doing it wrong by people who had never done what I'm doing. That's another goal of mine for um, the Wild Widow Woman Foundation is that, um, no matter how it's being done, I understand it's the very best you can do. It's what you got. It's, you're working with everything that you have, trying to make it work. And I will not speak to you from a place of not knowing. I will speak to you from a place of where I've been. I will not presume that mine is anything like yours. But I will also not presume that that it's dislike mine if it falls under the widowhood umbrella. Um, I can be that hard ass, but mostly I'm just very empathetic and good at saying, wow, that sucks. Let's go find you some solutions. Um, the resources I've come across are, baffling to me today versus what I had back then. Um, I want to differentiate between the healing and the moving on. Um, the healing is a heal with an ing. It means it's continuously happening. In 12-step programs, we learn that we never touch that one issue one time. We touch that one issue at different levels all the time. That's why we continue. That's why we do multiple inventories. That's why we revisit these topics and these issues years down the line because we're able to. Our brain is a wonderful thing, in that it protects us from that shit that we're not able to process just yet. But when we're able to process it, it's going to pop back up, and that just means that it's time. You got a deeper understanding coming, um, a new timeline, if you will, on that same issue. So the healing is a heal with an ing. It's a constant. It's a continuous, and it's not static. There is no status quo. You're either going forward or you're going backwards. You're either going into new behavior or you're sitting in your same old behavior. Sometimes same old behavior is exactly what we need. There's no judgment there. Sometimes the same behavior is the safest behavior and exactly what you should be doing. Same behavior doesn't mean bad behavior. When same behavior becomes detrimental to the moving forward, then the same behavior that means it needs to become different behavior. um I was straight up told about moving on and getting over it, and that I wasn't doing it right. And I was told this by people that claim to love me, that although we don't share blood ties, we do consider ourselves family. I was told I was cared about and then never reached out to. I mean, I people in my family that would tell me that they love me, that I've heard from less than 5 times in 9 years. Um, Today, that's my healing chooses not to attach to those numbers, to that fact. Um, I can tell you that that's not always been the case. I've cried many, many tears over family and friends that just didn't get it, that just didn't understand. Um, and what I want you to know as a fellow widow or widower is that there are people that understand, but they're not going to be those people. And eventually you'll be able to be with those people, and their understanding of your circumstance won't be as important because you have your understanding and your validation somewhere else. Um, I hope that helps. Um, I do have a couple of different analogies that I want to throw in there about the moving on versus living with and healing kind of thing. Um, one of my favorite ones is if you consider your life as, a box, say you live inside of a cube and there's a red button in it, and that just represents the pain of grief. When the grief happens, when the incident happens, it's a ball that's every bit the same size as the inside of that box. So that red pain button is getting hit all the time. Everything you do, everything you think, everything you say, everywhere you turn, your eyes open, your eyes closed, that pain is right there because the grief is that big. Over time, the size of that grief gets smaller. And I'm not going to say that it's not as intense because it just gets a little more concentrated. As it heals and as it changes, it doesn't hit that pain point quite so often. Every once in a while, though, because it is a more concentrated ball of grief, it's a little heavier. It's going to slam into that pain button and it's going to hurt like a motherfucker. And that's just the way it is. And you don't know when it's going to happen. Sometimes you will have, like some warnings, and as you learn yourself more and more, you'll be able to pick up on those personal triggers and those personal physical little ticks that let you know that sun's coming out. That let you know that something, that the pain's coming. But for the most part, that the size of the box, the size stays the same. The size of the pain button stays the same. It's the size of the grief, not the volume or the intensity of it, that will change. And the way that it hits that pain is going to be different over time. Another analogy that I've kind of grown attached to is wading through water. Now the water, and the water is just life, and sometimes it's ankle deep and sometimes it's up to your eyeballs and you're having a hard time breathing. And that's why we talk about going with the flow. Walking against the water is not anywhere near as easy as walking with it. So going with the flow, and you have this grief happen to you, I like to analogize, use the analogy of grief being a beach ball, fully inflated, bursting at the seams beach ball. Now, for me, when the beach ball first appeared in my life, I didn't like it. So I would try and hold it down. Now, mind you, that bitch is tethered to you. It's not going to separate from you. You can hold it underwater. It'll even, the tether might be kind of long, but every once in a while it's going to just pop up and hit you right in your face. That means life is happening and you've tried to squash your grief and now it's exploding on you. And if you're lucky, you can get that shit under control pretty quickly, and you're at a decent depth of water, so you're not, you're not drowning in it. I experienced sometimes when I was up to here with it, and I've got I'm trying to hold the grief under and I'm trying to keep my head above water, and then the grief pops up, and I went flailing for a while, and that happened to me a couple of different times, different circumstances. Just know that is normal too, and that the sooner that we can learn to stop suppressing that beach ball and just allow it to do what it does, it'll stay tethered. It's going to come back. You're going to get to feel those feelings. Just not to stifle it, not to push it under, not to, don't ignore it, because it'll tangle around your legs and it'll trip you up. And then you find yourself underwater for a minute. So those are my two analogies with dealing with the healing as it's happening, especially early on. As I've moved down the road, like I said, it's been almost 9 years. As I've moved down the road, it's that intensity that I was talking about of that ball being smaller but a little denser is very real. These podcasts, for instance, are a little bit triggering for me. Oftentimes I'll finish up here and I'll go have a good cry because all the emotions are right here at the surface, and it has hit that pain button pretty hard, and I get to go deal with what I feel so I can heal. So dealing with the feelings is where the healing happens. Yogi Brian likes to say the healing is in the feelings, and that it's all, kind of the same thing. So short episode today, but those are just some touch points on navigating through that little bit of that first little bit of loss, the differences between healing and moving on, and those coping mechanisms that sometimes turn into ugly behavior later. Um, please know all of that is normal, and it may be scary again, and I'll say it every single time. I am very real about reaching out. If you are bold enough to put your phone number in the comments, I will be bold enough to call you. And I mean that in the most sincere way. I I want people to know that they have somebody that will at the very least understand what's happening or what they've been through and will listen to it. No questions asked, no judgment. Okay. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. And we're gonna have guests soon. I'm thinking next week. Mm-hmm. Maybe the week after, but regardless, we're gonna have some guests. I'm gonna interview some folks. So looking forward to it. Talk to you soon.